Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Fish Bytes, the Miami Herald's Miami Marlins podcast. I'm Jordan McPherson. He's Andre Fernandez. How you doing, Dre?
Hanging in there, buddy. And you are about to head out to one of the cities I used to like covering because I seemed like I was always covering it for Clark Spencer back in the day, St. Louis. So glad you're up there, and not just the arch and everything about the city, but it's always a cool ballpark too. So I'm jealous, man. I got to get out on the road once in a while,
Yeah, I told you, trips are open for the taking. Just let me know.
Yeah, I'll let you know later in the season.
Yeah, definitely. But St. Louis done that trip every year that the Marlins have played them. Obviously, not 2020 season because that season they only played the East, but went there in 19, went there last year. Finally got to go to the Arch last year. I enjoyed doing that. It just opened up a couple weeks earlier because there were still COVID restrictions going on when at the point of the season when I went there. But backdrop is one of the best in baseball. I mean, you have that, you have Pittsburgh, got a couple others, but those are the two that obviously pop in the head. NL Central, man, just something about the views they have there. Have those ballparks.
With Wrigley, everything. You're right. You got the history of Wrigley. You got PNC's probably the most beautiful backdrop, in all of baseball when you sit there at home plate and even walking around that stadium, the legends, the statues they have out there, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, even Cincinnati, like we didn't talk about the Reds, but they've got obviously all their baseball history too at that ballpark, right there by the water too. I mean, yeah, you're right. It could be the most scenic division when you talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, and we're gonna get a good chunk of it over this next month. I mean, it's St. Louis to start this week, and then right after the All-Star break, it's Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and then Milwaukee's at the end of the year. Chicago, I believe, some point in August. So finally, the first of the five for this time around, and for the Marlins, it's coming at a pivotal time. I mean, they just went 4-2 on this last homestand. They swept the Colorado Rockies, went 1-2 against the Mets, and they're now 2-5 overall against the National League leader. And right now, they're treading water, which there's only so much more time where you can be treading water before a decision needing to be made. They're 33-38 on the season, and as of the time of this recording, Sunday night, they are 12.5 behind the Mets for first place in the East, which we already know at this point is already the dream that you probably need to stop thinking about. But they're 6 games out of the last wild card spot. And St. Louis is in that last wild card spot right now. The only other 2 teams between St. Louis and the Marlins in the standings for that third spot are San Francisco and Philadelphia. San Fran's a half game out of St. Louis. Philadelphia is a game and a half out of St. Louis. Marlins are obviously 4.5 back of Philly, which would be the third place team in the East. And again, you got 3 games now against St. Louis Monday through Wednesday. And then you've got 4 games against the Nationals on this road trip that takes you through the 4th of July. They're going to have to make a statement in St. Louis, and then they're going to have to do what they need to do against the Nationals, which they have done all year at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a huge mountain to climb for them, to be honest. I mean, we keep talking about that, the last couple of weeks. The victory on Sunday was good. At least it's another keep you in it win. But then again, compared to the series where a couple of games got away, again, another series where it's unfortunate because, you have to start getting 2 out of 3 no matter who it is. But especially, like you said, I mean, you can't dismiss them completely yet because of the fact that so much of their schedule is still a lot of games in hand against the teams that they're trying to catch. But at the same time, thanking the switch of Major League Baseball expanding the playoffs a little bit right now for keeping them a little more in it than they would be if it was 10 teams. They'd be 8 out right now instead of 6 because chasing Atlanta. But it's still a big mountain, whether it's 6 games or not. At this point in the season, you're not completely out of it, but again, they're going to have to really make some inroads. And I'm going to say it the other way. I know we've been kind of like, I've been especially trying to do a little more realistic, but if you're going to believe that they can still do this, I guess the one thing is they are getting healthier. They're about to get Brian Anderson back. They're, in theory, about to get Joey Wendell back any day now, too. So once that happens and you get a few more pieces in place, maybe if some of the pitching can get shortened up a little bit, get a little healthier, that's also going to help too. is that enough to kind of turn the corner a little bit and maybe start to make a tad bit of a push into this wild card picture? We'll see. It's going to be a very telling month of July, not just in the short term, but in the long term too, like as we've talked about, because it's going to dictate what kind of moves, if any, they do make before the deadline, in terms of looking beyond this season and trying to continue this process that they hope at some point pays dividends.
Yeah, and to add on to a little bit of what Andre said with the guys returning, Brian Anderson did 3 rehab assignment games with AAA Jacksonville Thursday through Saturday, and he was in the clubhouse with the Marlins post-game Sunday on getaway day as they were getting ready to go to the airport. So it's a matter of when, not if, for him during the Cardinal series that he's going to get activated. Joey Wendell has played games Saturday and Sunday. Saturday he played, I think it was either 5 or 6 innings at third base. Sunday he was the designated hitter, and based off the stat line, he looked good. His swing's there. He's making the contact and the timing's good. It's just a matter of how the hamstring's recovering. And with Wendell, especially because this is the 3rd time with that hamstring that it's flared up and it's caused him to miss games. He went on the IL twice, and he missed an entire series before those 2 IL stints. So the Marlins are understandably being cautious with him, but to at least get Brian Anderson back, that helps you. And especially with the way John Birdie's playing now, it helps you deploy Birdie in other spots while also finding ways to keep his bat in the lineup and give other guys days off, give other guys rest that they haven't really been able to do. I mean, if you look at the infield in general, they've had to play in the month of June. John Birdie's played all but 2 games this month. Jazz Chisholm Jr. has played all but, I think, 4 games this month. Miguel Rojas has played all but 3 or so games. So to get Anderson back and eventually Wendell to go back to sort of what they had the start of the season, what they had in that April when they went 12-8, where you're able to move guys around. You're able to have Joey Wendell spell Rojas and Chisholm in the middle infield, give them a day off their feet, let Anderson play third or play in the corners, give Jorge Soler and Avisail Garcia, both of whom have been playing beat up as well, by the way. Avisail Garcia missed the last 2 games with dealing with a hamstring injury. He and Soler both had some stuff with their backs, which, again, playing the everyday grind for those guys has been hitting them a little bit as they get into month 3. So to be able to have that full bench again, and to be able to have the guys who have been playing every day coming off the bench on occasion, it sort of gets them back to that rhythm, that flow, that tactic that they were trying to do from the start, which was bring your lineups out to play matchups that they really couldn't do because they had to play with who they had, and they didn't want to roll guys like Luke Williams or Eric Gonzalez or Roland Astudillo's everyday guys, which is understandable. But it also gets to the point where it wears out a lot of those guys who you're expecting the key contributions from every day. So it was
it's the stamina part too,
and it's got tough on them at this point.
Yeah, it's the stamina part too for 162, especially with some of the veterans that you want to keep fresh and you want to be able to not burn them out so early in the season. I mean, it was their formula from the beginning. We said it. This was going to take that type of team, the look of, again, to say they're neighbors from a little north of Florida here. It was that sort of style like the Rays, where it was moving parts and maximizing strengths of each guy's playing matchups, all that sort of thing. And then it was suddenly out the window when your 2 of your main guys that you were counting on in Anderson and Wendell went down. Now you can basically like run the car the way you want it to, the way you kind of envisioned it. You get back to a little more of the type of ball you want to be able to play. And, if the pitching can hold up in certain starts here and there, aside from, we saw Sandy's been phenomenal, but he's human. Every once in a while, it's not going to be as stellar. And we saw that in his last go around. But some of the other pitchers too. I mean, Daniel Castano deserves a mention. Tremendous, not just this past start, but he's been solid in these spots that he's been able to kind of patch that rotation up a little bit. So if they can keep getting that until the arms get fully healthy, you're looking at a situation where that's where it gives some hope for maybe a little bit of optimism, even though it's not looking very good right now in terms of the potential wild card picture. But maybe they could fight their way, at least get back into the conversation a little bit, get a little closer where it doesn't look as daunting.
And on the Castano front, I think you need to give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back there, Mr. Fernandez, about back in your days with Baseball America and putting a Marlins prospect listing together. You had him in your top 30 at one point, did you not?
Well, I did. I appreciate that because, yeah, even I was a little bit when he came up and struggled a bit. I was like, was that too much of a reach? But the way it was always like from talking to people and even guys that I worked with at BA that gave me, Kyle Glazer and others we talked to, at length, just kind of gauging on guys that have done it a lot longer than I have. And the thought process was, here's a guy who you always look at the potential and the upside and the tools and all of that. But there's something to be said for a guy that can become a major leaguer and actually stick in the major leagues. And I don't know how long of a career Daniel Castano's really going to end up having, but he's done a lot more than a lot of prospects have. There's a lot of prospects that have burned out or not even gotten there. And he's not only in, he's starting. We saw it since the pandemic year. He's starting and he's contributing and he's pitching well. Those are all notches where it was, I never put him super high on the list because you can't compare to some of the other talent they had in the system at the time. But to me, it was deserving of him at least being in that group of 30 to 40 guys because, look, there's something to be said when you can achieve that and you can sustain yourself as a major leaguer for a decent amount of time. And this is a guy, again, I always said, we've always said it. He was the afterthought of that trade. Yep. He was the fourth guy in that trade. You said his name and you were like, who? That's the throw-in guy. Is he ever even going to make it? He's not only made it, but look what he's doing. So that's really it.
Yeah, not only was he the fourth guy from that Marcell Ozuna trade, which, again, that whole trade was Sandy Alcantara, Magneuris Sierra, who held his own as that fourth outfielder guy that they needed when they had him on the roster. Zach Gallen, who was flipped for Jazz Chisholm Jr. We see how that has worked out. And Daniel Castano, and Castano openly, I remember after one of his starts, I think it was last year, when he had a decent outing and was asked about getting to this point. And he was like, yeah, I know that everyone looks at me as that throw-in chip or whatever, but he felt the confidence that he could eventually get to where he was, get to being a big leaguer, even if he wasn't the ace of a staff, even if he was just the number 5 guy or a long reliever in the pen. He knew that he had something in him that could make him a contributing factor to a big league club. And the Marlins obviously saw by keeping him here. They had him on the opening day roster as their long reliever when the rosters were at 28. When it got shrunk down to 26, he was one of the odd men out that got sent down to AAA. But when he had to come back up with the injuries that have happened to the rotation, he's had 3 starts so far since getting called up. The middle start against the Rockies was a rough one. He gave up 4 earned runs, didn't even make it. I don't think he made it through 4 innings there. But if you look at the other 2, 6 2/3 scoreless innings against the Philadelphia Phillies, 2 earned runs on 5 hits over 7 innings against the New York Mets, and retiring 14 of the final 15 that he faced, not giving up a hit after the 3rd inning. For a guy like that, to do what he did against those 2 lineups, even if it is just a one-off, that is something that a lot of pitchers and a lot of pitchers who are going to be a lot more highly touted than him don't accomplish.
No, that's what I mean. A lot of guys don't even make it and to the major leagues, like just looking at it, or even contribute, or maybe they come in, they have one moment and that's it, things like that. Granted, if you look at his career, he still hasn't pitched probably, if you look at his amount of innings, it's not even really like a full starter's season. You're talking about today was his 13th major league start. But even then, how many guys don't even get to double-digit starts in the major leagues? And he already has 13. It's not a great amount, but I'm saying in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the enormous amount of guys that come through a farm system, how many can say that? And it's 13 and counting. The way he's pitching, he could stay for a while longer. So that's all it is. We never made him out to be this big, huge superstar, but he deserved to be among the better guys in their system. Even if it was maybe in that, we were talking about, in that top 20 to 30-ish range, because look, he's been able to find a role for himself, and that credit to him. He's done a good job.
And it's also the latest example of what having good, even potentially under the radar starting pitching depth does for a team, especially when you look at the Marlins, when you looked at their initial.
They needed it right now.
And they, especially with them needing it now, when you looked at it when Luzardo went down, and then when Poteet went down, and then when Edward Cabrera went down, and you start looking through, and then Max Meyer was hurt, so you couldn't do the spur of the moment call up for the big prospect.
And Cody Patina, right? And Cody Patina, another similar one. We didn't. That wasn't similar to Castano in the sense of he was also kind of an unranked guy who little by little worked his way up, and now he's done a very similar thing to kind of carve a rollout for himself. And now you look at how he's seen kind of differently.
Yeah, exactly. And you go with those guys, and then you see Eliezer Hernandez struggle, and you're trying to figure out what arms are left. And obviously, Braxton Garrett they brought up first, and he's held his own, hasn't been fantastic, but has started to look better, even though the results aren't there. And then you had Castano, and it was the matter of first off, was he going to be built up enough? Was one of my first things, because again, he was being used as a reliever, so he was used as a reliever that first month and a half. So the fact he was able to get built up as quickly as he did while working in AAA was great. And then the results come as well. And now the Marlins are also starting to get a little healthier on the pitching side too. Edward Cabrera should be starting rehab assignment soon. He was supposed to start one Wednesday, but he ended up having a personal matter, basically was away from the team for a couple of days. He was throwing in Jupiter over the weekend. So it would be anticipated that at some point this week, he'll be up in AAA throwing again in a live setting. Marlins manager Don Mattingly said he anticipates Edward Cabrera will probably need 2 outings before getting activated again. So probably think either that last homestand before the All-Star break or right after the All-Star break, Cabrera should be back. Jesus Luzardo has begun his throwing program. Cody Patina is throwing bullpen sessions. Max Meyer is back and throwing in AAA. We'll touch on him and some more minor league guys in a little bit. But to see the pitching starting to come back, and with Sandy doing what he's doing, Pablo bounced back his last outing against the Rockies, to see that group, if that group can start to return to form while the position players start getting healthy, it's just a matter of, it's good to see. It also circles back to, are they all getting healthy too far down the road from where they are? And that's going to be the most telling sign of what happens over this next month. If they're rounding into form, are they doing it at the right time, or will the time have already passed them? And if it's the latter, it's unfortunate given the situation that they'll be at full strength potentially when the decisions that need to be made are already being made.
I mean, look, the bottom line is if you look at the standings right now, there's a gap. There's a significant gap between. People are going to say, 4.5, but 4.5 is a decent gap right now between Philly and Miami. Can they narrow that realistically in the next few weeks before the deadline? Because if they do, now you look at it a little differently and you think, okay, we're in it. But if they kind of, waffle a little and keep dropping, or the gap grows, that's going to be that's it. That, in a nutshell, that's the decision right there over the next 3 weeks. If in 3 weeks that 4.5 has shrunk and they have an actual real chance, or is it worse or pretty much the same? And you pretty much at that point start looking ahead and kind of punt on the season. I mean,
so basically what you're saying is circle July 15th to 17th when they host the Phillies right before the All-Star break.
I mean, if it matters by then, because if they're 7 back or 8 back of the Phillies by then, I mean, you're counting on a sweep to even get back to where you were. I mean, but if they're closer, if you're hanging around and then you get to that series and you're only 3-4 back, then it's huge, obviously. Yeah. So it could be definitely a pivotal series right there.
But also on the flip side of what you're saying, if they were that far back and they get the sweep, they're in it. But it's also the matter of, on the other side, if they get swept, then it's they're definitely out.
Of course. So from right. But I'm also No, what I'm also saying is, like, if you're 9 back and you sweep them, you get the 6. It's like, okay. But it's much different if you're like where you are right now. Even if it is 4.5, and all of a sudden you get that sweep and you're at 1.5, and they are still that next, and you're still not just 1.5 of them, but maybe 2 back of the third wild card. Now we're talking.
Yeah, and when you look at the rest of their schedule through the All-Star break, it's you have 3 games against St. Louis. They have 4 games against the Mets from July 7th to July 10th. The rest of their schedule is 4 games against the Nationals, 2 games at home against the Angels, which I know you're going to see, potentially see Mr. Ohtani if he ends up pitching that first game.
I think I may end up having to go to both games because from looking at it now, things have changed. Now it looks like he might pitch the Wednesday, the second game. So, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. You'll find a way. Okay, so 4 games against the Nationals, 2 games at home against the Angels, 4 games at home against the Pirates, and 3 games at home against the Phillies. So that's, and again, there's the saving grace is in terms of if they're able to handle the teams that they need to handle, i.e., the Nationals and the Pirates. If they can go hypothetically 6-2 in those games and find ways to do things against the Angels split hypothetically, and then find something and then see what happens when they're potentially full strength for 4 games against the Mets. That's what, again, it's a lot of hypotheticals, but
yeah, they have to do what they did against Houston to come up with 2 out of 3 like that. More often than not, that has to happen, and that's where a team that's been this banged up has to be at full strength to make it work, and that's what we're talking about. It looks like they're getting there now, but are they going to stay there? Are guys going to stay durable enough to, and are they going to be sharp too? Because, I mean, yes, we've seen it how Brian Anderson will come off the IL and the first day he starts tearing it up like he never left. But some guys may not have that timing right when they come back too. So it's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts. But if it can all click, maybe. But again, it's a big if and a big gap to overcome right now. And we're talking about that gap in terms of Philly, but Philly's not the one holding the third wild card. That's above them, so it's like even more games behind. So
but just one last thing with Philly, when you talk about health, they're going to be without their top hitter, Bryce Harper.
True.
So
puts a lot of pressure on the offseason free agent target that was coveted so much in these parts.
And do I need to, as I mentioned with you when we were texting earlier, should I just rehash what he's doing so far? Because I'm sure the fans would probably like to hear what Mr. Castellanos is doing out there.
I mean, you could. I mean, I'll go on the part of one way or the other.
Yeah, no, I was going to.
They wouldn't have gotten great bang for their buck one way or the other with the ones they did sign or the one they didn't sign.
Yeah. So again, I'll rehash again. It's the whole Nick Castellanos versus Jorge Soler, Avisail Garcia debate. Nick Castellanos this year, through his games played today, even after getting 4 hits today, granted all singles, he is hitting .252 with a .387 slugging mark and a .693 OPS, along with, when he plays in the field, -12 defensive runs saved. -12.
Yeah. That's the part that really, when you sent it to me, I was like, yikes. Because
and also another Castellanos stat, he has 7 home runs this year, 1 more than Miguel Rojas this year. Miguel Rojas is 6 today, or on Sunday.
Right.
And and for the other guys, Jorge Soler, 736 OPS, 429 slugging, 13 home runs. And he was, I believe, a -1 defensive run saved. Avisail Garcia, yes, the numbers are not great on him. He's 590 OPS, only 5 home runs, 24 RBI. That also, and again, this is where I'm going to start with the skewing the numbers here. He was just at the Mendoza line for the first 2 months of the season. If you look at just June alone, he has the 746 OPS with 6 of his 10 extra base hits. So it's starting to turn the corner in month 3. But again, those first 2 months really did set him back, and it set the Marlins back with both him and Soler not fully producing the way the Marlins were anticipating. At the end of the day, all 3 have been underproducing from anybody's standards. Yeah. But it's also the matter of 2 guys both playing, and both of them playing defensively well, while the offense is coming in spurts, versus Castellanos for the price of one guy with the defensive liability on top of the underproducing on offense. So there are the arguments there.
It's just always a big gamble when you take a chance on guys that have had, when you gamble on the guys that have had maybe the 1 or 2 big years, and you're hoping for that, and then you get, but maybe the whole track record, when you look at it, whether it's 6, 7 years, that's like the isolated 1 or 2 great ones, and then you're getting more of the track record of who they are. And it seems like even in the Phillies case, they're getting Castellanos before he kind of went on this surge in recent years. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like now he's crashing back to earth kind of thing. And So in any case, it just seems like, unfortunately, you can't say the bad word, but they're screwed kind of in one way or the other. Would have been, and they're going to get what they're going to get. They're not going to get that game changer, amazing production, at least not yet. I mean, there's a whole second half to be played, but so far it hasn't been the case.
Yep, definitely. And on that note, let's switch to minor league talk, where at the very least, since we've been talking about the playoff line and all of that, at least one Marlins
someone
minor
who is going to the postseason.
Playoffs.
Yep.
Yeah. The AA Pensacola Blue Jays, which, again, before I mention it, just to backtrack with how the playoff format works in the minor leagues, because it can get kind of confused for everyone who focuses just on the big leagues. In AA, High A, and Single A, so all of the affiliates except for the top level, they look at the season as two halves. So the top team in each division in each half gets a playoff berth. So
they already clinched.
Yeah. So the first half of the season for AA, High A, and Single A was Sunday. That was the cutoff for the first half of the season. The Pensacola Blue Wahoos won their division in the first half in the Southern League.
First half champs. Yep.
So they're the first half champs, which means they're automatically in the playoffs. If they ended up winning the Southern Division again, whoever finishes second in the second half will get the second spot. So
the second half is a little more for bragging rights than anything else because they're already in.
Exactly. So the way it works in the playoffs is the 4 teams, 2 teams from each division. They'll do a best of 3 series, top team against or first half champion versus second half champion in each division, and then the winners of the faces each other in a best of 3 for the championship. So the Pensacola Blue Wahoos are automatically in. So, and with that group, that's where a lot of the Marlins big guys are outside. A lot of their guys who are a tier away from making their big league debuts, I should say. You got Yuri Perez and Zach McCambley as their main 2 pitchers. Troy Johnston, who's been on a tear for the last month and a half. Griffin Conine, and newly named to the top 30, one of their better reliever prospects, Josh Simpson, who was from their draft a couple drafts ago. And then Gerard Encarnacion was part of that group for the first month and a half so before going to AAA and then getting a coffee in the big leagues. But his contributions from that first month or so.
Man needs a second cup of coffee after what he did. I'm sorry. I was annoyed to see that. But
I will say he is on the taxi squad again with them for St. Louis. He was with the Marlins on Sunday. He arrived there Sunday with Eric Gonzalez. So he will be on the taxi squad, which means if something happens with Absal's hamstring or with something happens with Jorge Soler, he's right there.
He's right there. Yep.
And again, it also comes with the balance of with where the Marlins are, again, with those big money guys, with Jorge Soler and Absel Garcia. If you're playing them as often as you are, and Gerard is a corner outfielder, you can't play him in center. So you don't have that option with him.
Well, again, this is where the next 20, 21 days we'll make a decision on someone like him.
Exactly. But the good thing for him, again, he's on the 40-man roster, so it's not like they have to jump through hoops to transactions wise to get him up there. It's just a matter of spot opens, he comes up.
Right.
So so AA, whoever's there with them with the AA Pensacola Blue Wahoos at the end of the season is going to be playing postseason baseball. And from there, just some quick roundup of just the month of June. I know the month goes for a few more days, but we don't podcast again until July, so might as well hit with what we have right now. Max Meyer finally made his return to Jacksonville after that month of rehab with the right ulnar nerve irritation. Threw 4 innings, struck out 5. We only gave up 1 hit, granted a solo home run, no walks. So good first step. Now it's just a matter of him continuing to build up and get back to where he was innings wise. He was going 6, and I think he got into the 7th once early in the season before the injury happened. But really good first start for him. Really good first step back for him, especially if there's a chance to potentially see him by season's end.
Well, selfishly, I may get to see him because while Jordan is up in St. Louis and then Washington for the 4th, I am actually going to be in Jacksonville. So I'm going to definitely check out not just Scampy, but the actual jumbo shrimp players themselves. So if Max Meyer's there, looking forward to that, to seeing him pitch. But for him, like you said, it's about the bounce back. It's about getting back that, the way he was before. And you never want to see an injury, but now that it's happened, it's part of the whole process with him, how he recovers, how he can keep going forward, because they are going to happen, obviously. So now you see that part of the development with him, and I'm curious to see how he continues to work for the next month or so.
Yep. And then staying in AAA, another guy who you will see, regardless of if Max Meyer starts or not, JJ Bleday, 7 home runs this month. He's up to 15 home runs on the season. The month of June, through 22 games, he's leading the Jumbo Shrimp with a 557 slugging mark, a 932 OPS. So he has the power. He's still drawing the walks. And it's, to me, probably one of the better months outside of that last month of the season last year when he turned everything on right before going to the fall league. This is probably his best month that he's put together since getting drafted by the Marlins, and that's definitely needed.
And I always I know you say it's my thing, but it's true. I see that a lot on the on-base part, especially a guy like him where he has struggled at the plate, sometimes with just the consistency of getting on base and seeing the ball well, all of that. So this is a good step. The power is never going to be, to me, like something where like he's hitting 15 home runs. That's JJ, good. But it's more getting on. I'm looking at that OPS and looking at that those are good signs. Those are good signs that he's seeing better and the swing is there, just building off of that. So it's good. It's good. And you're right. I can't remember another month other than the one you mentioned where he's been this productive. So again, another positive trend for him.
Yep. And now to go down to High A Beloit, the Sky Carp. Again, just I think I say it every time. Love the name change. Love the name change. Yep. Shortstop Naseem Nunez. Again, the guy who everyone knows for his ability to play Gold Glove caliber defense and to steal bases when he gets on. Well, he's getting on base now. This month, hitting 290, 20 for 69, 872 OPS. And his last 3 games this week, he has 5 extra base hits. On Friday, he had his first career 4-hit game, which include a double, a triple, 3 RBI, and 2 stolen bases. He had another triple Saturday, and then Sunday, he went 3 for 5, and he hit a home run. First home run since getting drafted by the Marlins back in, what years? That was the 2019 draft. Yeah.
Yep.
So, first career home run, and again, everything else with his game has been as advertised. His defense is great. Right. He's only stolen 30 bases so far this year. Only 30.
Yeah, only. Weak. I was kidding. No, I mean, and I think probably some of these extra base hits, I haven't actually physically seen all of them, but I'm thinking some of them with his speed has helped, and him extending, getting an extra base here, an extra base there, that sort of thing too. I mean, we know he's not a power hitter, but even guys that aren't power hitters can occasionally have these little power spurts. We've seen that with other guys, in major leagues in the past. But it's good. Again, sort of just like Bleday, the fact that getting on base more often, he's hitting the ball, making solid contact more often, that sort of thing. That's the good sign. That's the positive trend there that you want to see from a guy like that, because like we said a bunch of times, he's got the speed tool, he's got the defense tool, but the bat, if that's something to build on, if he can continue to do, he can become that much more of a productive player.
And then 2 more guys to mention. First, another guy in High A Beloit, Cody Morissette, their 2nd-round pick from last year, who's not really one of the marquee names, but he's hit 6 home runs so far this month after having just 7 home runs in his first 75 games overall, including 30-some games last year and the first 40-some games this year. He's leading Beloit with 43 RBI and 41 runs scored on the season. And then in Single-A Jupiter, another one of both Andre and my favorite, Jose Salas. He's in the month of June, he's leading the Jupiter Hammerheads in basically every offensive statistic you could ask for. 338 batting average, 435 on base percentage, 535 slugging, 970 OPS, 13 RBI, 6 doubles, 2 home runs, 16 runs scored, and 6 stolen bases. Literally putting it all together in his best month with a full season affiliate.
I still firmly believe that kid will be in that starting middle infield at some point. I don't know for how long, but I think he is going to get his chance, because from the beginning I've liked just the whole makeup, everything about him, and again, still in Jupiter, but building his way up little by little. I think in time, he will be a part of that Marlins middle infield. That if he can get there while Jazz is there, that's going to be fun to watch.
But I'm also going to bring up, I went up to Jupiter for a couple games. I think it was either earlier this month or the beginning or the end of last month. He was playing third base also. So he's expanding his repertoire. So he has that option as well.
He has that option, right.
Exactly, especially with where the Marlins are right now with third base. Again, you have Brian Anderson and Joey Wendell for the time being. But when you look at how far down the line Jose Salas is at this point, that's also another option for them, especially since when you look at their third base depth in the minors, there really isn't too much in terms of tried and true third baseman. So
it could be. I mean, it could be the way.
Window for him at the very least.
Yeah, I kind of just don't want to give up on his more natural position for him yet. That's when he's this guy. But you're right. I mean, they could. If you also have, Watson and other guys in the system that fit that mold too. So it's just going to depend in a year or two where they're kind of at depth-wise. If there's a log jam in the middle, and he could just slide right into a position of need like at third by then, if that's the case, you're right, that could be the ticket for him there. But I'd be shocked if he doesn't make it to the show as people think he would. He's showing all the signs little by little. There's still a little bit of a ways to go for him right now, but I think he's definitely got what it takes to get there.
Yeah, and the third base side of it, I should mention, in Jupiter, they have Khalil Watson, Jose Salas, Ian Lewis, and Christian Rodriguez. You have four guys who are basically rotating second base, shortstop, third base, and DH to make sure all four of them are in the lineup and all of them getting their consistent bats. And that's where Salas being able to slide over to third, because it's him and Christian Rodriguez were getting the bulk of the reps there. Ian Lewis and Khalil Watson primarily second base and shortstop, and then Salas getting to roam around into the middle infield when Khalil or Ian are DHing or have a day off. And it's just seeing them, how much they're utilizing and rotating those four guys, especially this early on, basically being able to give them that versatility this early in their careers, and this early at the lower levels of the minors. It's only going to help them as they continue to move up the chain.
And sometimes when people get fixated on the positions you're playing in the minors, you shouldn't, because in the minors, that's what it's for. That's what you want. You play different spots. There's so much development and experimentation going on in that sense to see who can play this, who's learning that spot, etc. Encarnacion, just to throw one example out there, look how they started playing him at first.
Troy Johnston was an outfielder before they started in the first base last.
Yeah, you can think of a ton of examples. I mean, that's what it's for. So again, that's a good log jam to have at that level right now, where all those guys are getting to play in the middle and the left side of the infield. That's only going to help all of them down the road.
No doubt about it. And that's going to wrap us up for this week's episode of Fish Bytes. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Jordan. He's Andre. We'll be back in next week, everyone.